here to introduce our speaker, Marissa Jardine. Marissa graduated from Eastern Michigan University in 2019 and began her journey at the Bird Center as an intern that same year. She quickly advanced through the ranks, becoming a rehab assistant, then assistant manager, before stepping into the role of clinic manager in 2021. As the federally and state funded licensed rehabilitator center for the as the federally and state licensed wildlife rehabilitator for the center since 2022, she is dedicated to improving the care and successful release of injured and orphaned songbirds. Marisha is passionate about continuing education in the field and has presented at the National Wildlife Rehabilitators Association Conference on improving release rates for young common grackles. She strives to support songbird populations, not only through hands-on rehabilitation, but also through public education and outreach. Please join me in welcoming Melissa Jardine to the podium.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction, Sandy. Sandy's been a really helpful volunteer since last year at the center. So thanks for joining me today. My name is Marissa. As Sandy mentioned, I am the clinic manager and licensed wildlife rehabber for the Bird Center of Michigan. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about our background before we talk about our main topic for the day, which is saving songbirds. So we're going to discuss how we save songbirds at our center and how you can help save songbirds in the wild. So, our beginnings. We were founded in 2004 by Carol Akerlof in Ann Arbor, Michigan, after decades of home based rehabilitation. We actually operated as the Bird Center of Washtenaw County in downtown Ann Arbor in a single room, 700 square foot building. You might have had this polling location if you're nearby. It was right by the U of M Stadium. So, the city of Ann Arbor graciously let us use this space to do rehab, but it was also a polling location. So during times where there's an election, we'd have to pack up all of our birds and move out. In November, that's not a big deal, right? Most of the birds go south. In August, it was another story, but we got it done because wildlife rehab is all about community and effort, and we had such a large group to help us. So even though we were in this 700 square foot building for nearly 20 years, we were able to rehab over 1,800 birds or 18,000 birds in that small space. Our mission as the Bird Center of Michigan, and this continues to this day, is that we're committed to aiding birds, wildlife, and the environment through rehabilitation and public education. So we've grown exponentially since we first were founded in 2004. This graph here shows our increase of intakes over the past little over a decade. Last year, we admitted over 1,950 birds, nearing 2,000 intakes. As a result of this large influx of patients over the years, we moved to a new facility in Saline. It's a 3-acre property, and we changed our name to the Bird Center of Michigan, and you'll see why in a moment. Our new property consists of a main songbird clinic, a waterfowl rehab barn, and 16 flight cages. We've also been able to expand our on-site medical care, including the ability to perform x-rays and euthanasias at the clinic. We also are open now year-round to accept injured and orphaned bird patients. So this graph here kind of just shows why we changed our name from the Bird Center of Washtenaw County to the Bird Center of Michigan. We take in birds from all over the state of Michigan, and we receive calls from even further. So, just for example, last month we got a call about a bird in Orlando. I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure there's not in Orlando, Michigan, but let me do a quick Google search. No, they were from Orlando, Florida, and they were in a gated suburb. So we really do get calls from all over, most of the time within Michigan, but from all over. But because of the staffing we have, we are able to assist callers from all over the state, tell them how to triage their injured and orphaned birds they have, and help refer them to a rehabber closest to them. So this graph, we're expecting to expand and take in more birds from all over the state as other rehab facilities close due to current financial situations as well as avian flu. Thankfully, we are able to work with the DNR, the MDA, and partnering with U.S. Fish Wildlife Service to continue to take bird species and increase our testing of bird flu. So we're still able to help. But due to these closures, we're expecting a further increase in our cases for this year. All right, we're going to jump into the different species we take in. And with those nests at your table, you're welcome to go ahead and take a look at them, pass them around. I'm going to discuss those different nests. And these nests are just kind of highlighting the variety of birds we get at our center. But yeah, feel free to look around and pass them around. I just ask that you don't poke or touch them because they can be fragile. So we do admit over 90 species at the center each year, and we do specialize in songbirds. So that's your common backyard birds like cedar waxwings, robins, doves, bluebirds. We also work with adjacent species like woodpeckers and hummingbirds. In addition, we take in aerial insectivores like swallows and swifts and nighthawks, and we do a lot of work with young waterfowl. Each year, we raise over 500 young ducklings at the center. A lot of work, super cute, a lot of work. Um, and one thing to note is that we are the only rehab center in Southeast Michigan that takes in baby birds as well as young waterfowl on a large scale. So if any of you were to find an injured or orphan bird, you'd be giving us a call and we could give you some guidance and help. So, as you're looking at the nest, did any group see the nest with a bunch of fluffy feathers and kind of disarray, the bigger looking nest? Okay, you got one there, and I think there's another one. Yep, another one there. The stinkiest nest, I do apologize, but that's because it's made by a mallard. How many of you have ever seen a mallard or a goose sitting like in a parking lot in mulch and you're wondering what the heck's going on? Yeah, we get calls about it every spring. So, in one of those nests, you'll actually notice wood chips and mixed in with that nest. So, we get this call very often where geese and mallards will be nesting in very urban areas. And it's usually a cause of concern for the person that means well, but young waterfowl, as areas have become increasingly urban, have gotten very good at adapting to these urban environments. So often you'll see birds nesting in parking lots and similar areas. But we have to trust their instincts and they know what they're doing. Often they'll come back year after year to the same areas. But that's just one common example. And those fluffy feathers you're seeing in those nests are actually the mom's own feathers. She pulls out her own feathers to insulate that nest. So talk about a good parent. Next, we have a house finch. So, unlike most birds that are nice and tidy, the adult birds will pick up poop. Yes, we're talking about poop. Sorry. At least it's after lunch, right? They will pick up the poop and remove it from the nest because they like to keep it clean. House finches, not the same story. So, as you can see, they make it a mess up until those baby birds fledge. Thankfully, the house finch nest that is out in the audience is poop free because those guys came in as day old hatchlings. But you'll notice that they insulate their nest with dog fur. And you'll also see string in that nest too. So it shows how they use things found in their environment, whether you're brushing your dog outside or you left some yarn outside, they will utilize that for their nest. Next, we have our chimney swift. Have any of you guys ever seen chimney swifts in Ann Arbor? We have quite a few roost. Or possibly seen what you thought were bats flying in downtown Ann Arbor? A lot of people think that these birds flying at night near these chimneys are bats, but they're actually usually chimney swifts. Based on their name, they are raised and live in chimneys. So they roost in chimneys overnight, and their nests are actually adhered using their saliva. So it's really cool. They adhere the nest with sticks to the side of the chimney and raise their birds there. Before chimneys were a thing, they would nest on like the sides of caves and in hollow trees, but once the 1800s occurred, they're like, these chimneys are really nice. So they've been in them ever since. All right, kind of touching again on what we discussed earlier with thanes found in yard. This is a very colorful nest with lots of strings and yarn sticking out of it. I think that table over there has it. Yeah, so look at all of that colorful strand. I thought that was a fake nest that got brought in, but it got brought in with a bunch of baby grackles in it after their nest had been accidentally destroyed during a tree trimming. These birds usually nest very high up in trees, so we don't often get their full nest in. This is a really good example of a natural material being used for a nest and an unnatural material. You'll see the natural material in that nest is small and short. It's a lot more compact, where those loose, colorful strings, they're fun, but do you see how loose they are and how easily a baby bird, as they grow, could get tangled in it? So that's something we have to think about. So it's a common thing. I see it online on Facebook a lot where people say, "Oh, leave out long strings of yarn, leave out this or that for the birds." But we really don't recommend doing that. They've been making nests with natural materials for millennia, so let's let them continue doing that. Man-made materials, generally, we want to try and get them out of nest because they can cause issues. We have quite a few barn swallow nests going around. So these are aerial insectivores, which means they are basically Olympics of the sky. They fly all the time. They eat, sleep, drink on the wing. They do everything while flying. And they make their nest using mud. So they will scoop mouthfuls and mouthfuls of mud to make their nest for their baby birds. And here's an example of that. These guys are really great to have around. They eat upwards of 2,000 insects a day each. So and then lastly, we have our Baltimore Oriole here. So Baltimore Orioles have a very unique nest. They're expert weavers. So I don't know if any of you are crafty. I would consider the Baltimore Oriole a crafting queen. They're super great at it. They make beautiful hanging nests and they weave all different materials together to create a hanging nest from branches. And there's a couple of those going around. We have a Baltimore Oriole education ambassador at our center, and she actually started to weave materials. In our center in her enclosure as a nest after she was surrendered to us after being kept illegally as a pet for 7 years. Um, I know it's unfortunate, but with her, we're able to bring her to smaller education events and educate about the importance of keeping birds wild. With her, we actually thought she was a male because her color was so vibrant, but she got so comfortable with her natural diet and the habitat we were able to provide for her, she ended up laying an egg and again trying to make a nest, which was really cute until it was the middle of summer and she would come up to the staff and interns and try and pull our hair out. Yeah, I guess our hair made really good nesting material. It was painful, but it was so cute. Like, how could you say no? And then lastly, we have a really tiny nest, just the size of maybe like a little bigger than a quarter. Um, these nests are made of lichen moss and spider silk. So they're made of spider webs, which is really cool. The kids get really excited about that one. And it's made because of their durability and because of the ability to expand as the baby birds grow. We do raise baby hummingbirds at our center. Um, they often fledge the nest too soon, and obviously, with a nest that small, it's really hard to find to re-nest back in that tree. So we'll raise them, and these guys are getting fed every 15 minutes for 14 hours a day. So, yeah, a lot of work, but so worth it. All right. Now that we've talked about a variety of the species we take in and some of the diversity we see of our species, we're going to talk about our most common causes of intake, how we help them at the center, and how you can help them in the wild. So, the three main common causes of intake we're going to focus on are cat-caught birds, window collisions, and orphaned baby birds. And just a fun fact, the average length of stay in days for a patient at our center is 40 days. So first, we're going to talk about the rehab of collision birds, and primarily I'm talking window collisions. How many of you have ever walked into a sliding glass door? Don't act like you're too cool. I've done it more times than I should have, right? It hurts, right? Not only is it embarrassing, but it kind of hurts. Imagine being a small bird flying 25 to 30 miles an hour, slamming into a glass door or glass building. Talk about a headache, at the very least, most likely a concussion. We always recommend birds that have suffered a collision be brought in for rehabilitation. It used to be a commonly spread thing where you would just put the bird in a box or leave them be, monitor for an hour or two, and if they fly away, then they're fine. You don't have to do anything. New studies have shown that they actually often succumb to their injuries after flying away due to that initial adrenaline rush that they receive after that collision. Not only that, but it can take time for injuries to fully present. I kind of try and compare it to, let's say, a car crash. Let's say you get in a car accident, you hit your head, but you're able to walk around after. That doesn't mean you don't need medical attention, right? You still probably want to get it checked out, make sure you're good. Same thing for our feathered patients. So we recommend that all birds that get hit by a window or a car get brought to our center. At our center, all of our injured patients receive pain medication and oxygen therapy on intake, and we're able to do exams and x rays to determine if there's any broken bones or inflammation, anything like that. I'm going to talk about two specific cases here. So, on the left here, we have an American crow, and he came in after striking a window pretty hard, and he broke his right humerus and his right wing. So, just like you would if you broke your arm, you get a cast, we wrap the wings of our patients. So, this wing was stabilized to heal. And he was on pain medications and vitamin supplements to help encourage that growth. You'll notice these paper tabs on the bird's wing wrap. That isn't serving a purpose on helping stabilize that wing, but what it's doing is distracting that crow. I'm sure if you guys know anything about crows, you know how smart they are. So of course they're going to try and pull that nice wrap that's helping to try and heal that wing to get that off. So we use those tabs as a distraction method for them, and it tends to work pretty well. Once that wing is fully healed, that wrap is removed, but that's not where the job ends. When you first get that cast off, you might have had for several months, your arm's weak or your leg's weak, you need to work at it, right? You need to do physical therapy to get 100% again. We do the same thing with our patients. So we'll do physical therapy, whether that's wing stretching, flying exercises, leg mobility exercises, etc. After, they get moved into a flight cage where they perfect their flight again and then are released back into the wild. To the right here, this is a tufted titmouse. He was brought in after suffering a window collision, and he has a symptom called torticollis, which is a fancy word for twisted neck. It basically happens due to inflammation in the head from a head injury, and it causes their neck to kind of tilt. So he received physical therapy over a period of several weeks and was able to be released back into the wild. We're going to chat about how you can prevent window collisions. Window collisions are incredibly common, especially this time of year. We're seeing a large increase of window collisions at the center due to spring migration. We are part of a flyaway zone. So we get millions and millions of birds flying through the state of Michigan during their migration periods. And these really critical areas where light pollution occurs, including Detroit and Ann Arbor, causes confusion for our patients and they end up striking buildings. So there are safe passage initiatives, lights out initiatives, including the city of Ann Arbor. They have a lights out initiative that helps turn off lights of high rises during migration periods to help reduce the number of collisions that occur. But they don't just hit the high rises, they hit windows of your own home too. Birds do not understand the concept of a window, so they only see the reflection of the nature that that window is showing. We recommend breaking up that reflection to help prevent collisions. So you can do that through a variety of methods, including stickers, paracord. We use glass marker at our center and draw designs on our window to break up the image, but anything to break up that image enough. One thing I see a lot of, and it's very popular, you can get it off Amazon, are these bird stickers. And they're very far spaced apart. If you're a small bird, even robin sized, there's enough space in there that it's not breaking up that image enough and they can still strike a window. So we do recommend that the spacing is no more than 2 inches apart. Next, I'm going to talk about the rehabilitation of cat-caught birds. So all birds that have been caught by a cat should be brought in for medical treatment. We give them antibiotics. Cats, we love them. Their saliva is filled with bacteria, and it's very easy for those birds to get infections. So we always recommend that a bird that has been caught by a cat be brought in, even if you don't see any obvious wounds or injury. And I'll give you an example of that on the next slide. In addition to antibiotic treatment for cat-caught birds, we'll do wound bandaging, feather regrowth, time weights, and air sac rupture monitoring. So this bird here on the left can anyone guess what this baby bird is by chance? I'm feeling confident. So it's actually a cardinal. Yeah, I know. Everyone's always so surprised by that one. So that is a northern cardinal nestling. And just by first glance, you wouldn't think anything was wrong. It's cute, fluffy, eyes are, alert. He's perched upright. This cardinal was caught by someone's cat, but they didn't see any wounds or anything, and they didn't really want to bring it in. We encouraged them to bring it in because, again, it's really easy for those cats to hide their wounds because the punctures are so small. They have really sharp teeth, and birds often hide their injuries. So underneath all those cute fluffy feathers, this guy had some air sac ruptures, which is part of their breathing system, and it basically causes them to inflate like a balloon. So we did an antibiotic treatment and pain medications, and he was able to be raised successfully with other cardinals his age and then released when the time was right. On the right here, we have a grumpy goldfinch who has seen better days, so he was not pleased that we just cleaned his head wound that he received. But this is a critical part of ensuring the successful rehab of cat-caught birds is proper wound cleaning and management to get that skin and feather regrowth. Preventing bird-cat interactions. So you don't want that first picture there. You don't want the cat and the bird feeder, right? If you have a cat, we recommend trying to do a catio or putting them on a leash or harness, or at the very least, having a bell on them so the birds can kind of hear them coming. Um, with cat and bird interactions, a lot of people that feed birds love animals in general, so they'll also feed cats. We get this a lot. People are feeding both cats and they're feeding birds. I totally get it. We all have animals, but what it does is it causes the cats to have a little bird buffet with the kibble you're leaving out, right? We really recommend that you either feed cats or feed birds, but we don't recommend feeding both due to those bird-cat interactions. You can also help participate in trap noodle release programs. The Humane Society of Huron Valley does work with them um, quite a lot, and you can help trap um, cats and get them spayed or neutered to help reduce the feral cat populations in your area. All right, lastly, we're going to talk about the rehab of baby birds. So, rehabbing baby birds takes a lot of work. You have to have a species specific diet, you have to encourage natural foraging behaviors, ensure proper imprinting, and there's very frequent feedings. So, a successful rehabilitation of a baby bird is all about replicating their natural history to the best of your ability. So we're not a bird. We have to do a lot of research and a lot of enrichment and maneuvering to ensure we're setting them up for success in the wild. Um, we raise upwards of 175 baby birds at the summer at any given time. And those baby birds are requiring 30-minute feedings for 14 hours a day. So a lot of mouths to feed. Thankfully, we have staff and interns to help with this, but it is a huge time commitment. Not only are we feeding 175 plus baby birds every half hour for 14 hours a day, we're also feeding them different diets, we're feeding them in different manners, and we're having their enclosures set up in different ways to reflect that natural history. So on the left here is a baby blue jay, and you'll see she kind of has these cute little sandals on her feet. Not a fashion choice, but she does look pretty good in them. She was kept by a rescuer for about a week, well meaning, but they were feeding her an inappropriate diet and trying to keep her and raise her on their own. Unfortunately, she was getting the equivalent of like a McDonald's diet every day, which, while delicious, we can't live off of it, right? So she wasn't getting the nutrients she needed, and it was causing her toes to begin to curl and have a deformity. We were able to get her brought into our center and get the boots on so the feet would heal correctly and she would be able to grow up normally and be released into the wild. We always recommend that if you find a baby bird that can't be renested, that it is brought in for rehabilitation. They're super cute, and of course, you might want to keep them, but it's in the bird's best interest to get them raised with other birds of their own species where they can receive their proper care. On the right here is a baby kingfisher. Um, they were amazing. So it was a crazy summer, but last summer we had never raised a baby kingfisher before, and then we got a nest of six. So a lot of digging through the research books, connecting with rehabbers all throughout the US on the best practices for these guys. So if you know anything about kingfishers, they are in the name, in their species name, they're big fishers. So they dive for fish from a height. How do you replicate that in rehab? So we had to start by offering them frozen thawed fish, then offering them live fish in bowls for them, just in front of them, for them to like pick at a little. Then we would increase the distance more and more until they had gotten older and they were in a flake cage diving for their fish in one of our deeper ponds that we have on our property. This was a very gradual thing, and the bait shops in the area got to know us very well because we were there nearly every other day buying fish. One of the main reasons we get baby birds in is unfortunately, um, due to not learning to coexist. So a lot of people see a baby bird in their yard or in their front door, and they're like, "Well, I don't want to deal with this." They move the nest, it becomes orphaned, and we have to bring it in. So we really encourage trying to learn to coexist with birds, finding ways to coexist while they are building their nests, they're having those babies. It's only a 4 or 5 week period, and it is honestly so rewarding to watch those birds grow and fledge. This these pictures here on the left are of a mourning dove nest with 2 eggs in it, and this is about the best dove nest I've ever seen. Doves usually put down 2 sticks and call it a day for their nest, so this is really nice, A plus. But the rescuer called and they were concerned. This is right by their back door, and it's in their backyard and they have dogs that she just know would go for those doves. We talked through, the positives of keeping that nest there, monitoring and keeping the dogs on the leash and kind of taking that positive spin. It's going to be amazing to watch those doves grow up. Well, we were able to convince her. The dogs did good on the leashes temporarily, and 2 weeks later, you can see the baby doves nestled up to the mom. And then we got an update, another 2 weeks later, how they had fledged and they had moved on. How many of you have wreaths on your door, especially with like Easter and spring? Anyone have some wreaths? Okay, we get this call a lot, and I'm going to show you guys this real quick. Watch your wreaths, okay? Birds love to nest in wreaths. We get calls about this every year, and it can happen so fast, especially with Easter being so late. Just make sure you're monitoring your wreaths if you don't want your front door to be inaccessible for 4 to 5 weeks. Um, this is a robin that actually nested in this wreath, and someone brought a bunch of baby robins in this last year. They very kindly parted with this so I can use it for education events, but it's very often with house finches and other species. So if you ever do see an adult bird making a nest on your wreath and you don't want it there, you can take away the nesting material if there's no eggs present. As soon as they lay eggs, it is considered an active nest, and we highly, highly recommend not moving it. They also are federally protected, but the DNR is not going to come out and arrest you for moving a nest off your front door. If you need to move it to get inside your own house, it is just strongly discouraged. Another thing we can do to prevent the orphaning of baby birds is checking before you cut. So it's spring, it's summer, the weather is finally nice, unlike this morning, and you're wanting to do some yard work. Checking for nests is super important step so you're not orphaning birds or even mammals. So doing mindful yard work, making sure to thoroughly check bushes and trees before trimming, especially during the height of baby season. And like this robin that was orphaned due to his nest getting cut down, he says, "Don't make me grumpy. Check for nests before you cut." So if you hire lawn services, giving them a heads up, or if they do find anything, asking them to be mindful of that, work around it is really important. If that's not possible, we can try and re-nest the bird. If you've done this, it happens. If a bird is accidentally, the nest is destroyed, you can try and re-nest that bird. So in this right corner here, you'll see a makeshift nest. So this is a Tupperware container with holes poked out of the bottom for drainage and natural leaf litter. This can be zip tied onto a tree or branch of a similar elevation and close distance to that original spot, and you can try and reunite with the parent. Even though we do hours of research, hours and hours and hours of research every year, we're attending the conferences, we're learning the new and the best in wildlife rehab, it does not replicate the parents' care that they can provide. So we try everything to reunite the bird with their parents when possible. All right. Lastly, I'm going to talk about learning the life stages of songbirds. A lot of people, while well meaning, unknowingly interfere with a bird's natural life stage. So, we're going to talk about the different life stages of birds and what to do if you find them on the ground or injured or orphaned. So, the first life stage, of course, is the egg, and almost all birds have a nest. Um, if you found an egg outside of its nest, it's a very common occurrence. It often means that the nest was predated by a raccoon or a possum. And you'll often find the eggs by themselves on the ground. Majority of the time, they are no longer viable. And while it is sad, it is the circle of life, and that egg will be able to provide nutrients for other growing young, whether it is an opossum or similar. Next, as the bird hatches from that egg, they're called a hatchling. So for this, we're using the Michigan state bird, the American robin. The bird has his eyes closed, some soft feathers, some soft, fluffy feathers, and he's pretty helpless. So he's relying on his parent for temperature regulation and constant feedings. If you were to find a hatchling baby bird outside of its nest, we would recommend trying to re-nest it as long as the bird is uninjured. All right, as they get a little older, they turn into the nestling. Um, at this stage, their eyes are starting to open. They're starting to get more feathers. They're looking more like a bird and less like an alien. Um, and they're still belonging in that nest, though, given the name, right? So they're nestling. So if you found a nestling bird outside of that nest, we're going to try and re-nest that bird or make a makeshift nest. Then, as they get a little older, they become a fledgling. I kind of like to consider these the teenagers of the bird world. So they're getting more independent. The parents are coming around a little less frequently, but they're still relying on them. So they're going to be on the ground hopping most likely as they learn to fly, and their parents are going to be coming around, but maybe every closer to hour to 2 hours, giving them a little supplemental feedings, making sure they're still sticking to their curfew and that sort of thing. If you found a fledgling bird on the ground, depending on the species, it's probably a totally normal part of their life stage, and we would recommend just leaving them be. This is the main stage in which people unknowingly interfere and remove them from a location, thinking the bird is in need of help, when it's actually completely normal for it to be on the ground. So this can depend though on the species. So if you do ever find an injured or orphaned bird of any life stage, sending us a text, giving us a photo of the bird, will be able to help determine that species and life stage and figure out the best steps for it. As that bird gets older, becomes the adult. If you ever see an adult bird on the ground, if it allows you to approach them, it's not flying away, something is going on with that bird, either an injury or illness, even if it's not obvious. Adult birds at this age, they view humans as predators and they're not going to want to get near you. So if they do allow you to pick them up, get really close to them, that's signs that something's wrong and they're in need of medical assistance. So we would recommend bringing them in for rehab. In short, if you've found an animal, if you found a bird that is injured or truly orphaned and in need of help, we would recommend contacting your local wildlife rehabber, placing the bird in a box in a dark, quiet area. So, placing the bird in a box in a dark, quiet area helps reduce stress levels and keep them calm. And for baby birds, we'd recommend placing a heating pad on low under the box. And as this little small cute grackle says, please don't offer me any food or water. It is often our very first instinct when we find a injured or orphaned baby animal of any sort to feed it. It's got to be hungry, right? But feeding a baby bird or just baby animal in general that isn't properly warmed or hydrated can do a lot more harm than good. So we recommend not offering any food or water as they can be fed something inappropriate, or if they're not properly warmed or hydrated, they might not be able to digest the food properly. So just not offering food or water, but keeping them warm in a safe, quiet, dark area away from any loud noises and contacting a rehabber. And for you guys, if it's a bird, that would be us, the Bird Center of Michigan, for help. So, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to this talk. The Bird Center, as I mentioned, is from Saline. We were in Ann Arbor, we're now in Saline, and we do primarily run off volunteers and interns. We do have a small staff number, but if you are interested in helping volunteer or support the center in any way, we do have brochures at the shared interest groups table, and you're welcome to take a look at all the other nests. Thank you.
Okay, I assume we're ready for questions. And again, remember to seek out either Al or myself, 'cause the people on YouTube won't hear your question unless you use a mic. So I'm going to start out since I got the mic. Uh, I'd like to know about the hummingbirds. I know there's a bird migration map. Do you know where they're at right now? Are they here in Michigan or not yet?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have seen some sightings, I think, in Ohio. There actually was, I think, a random sighting of maybe one in Michigan, but they're still making their way up. But I'm assuming probably in the next few weeks they'll be here.
Over there. You got one over there, Al? If not, I got one here. Too late. I got one up here. Don't worry.
Is there
Go ahead.
is
Speak.
there a way to prevent hawks from getting birds that are ground feeders?
That's a great question. So, thank you. So, pox is a type of virus that birds can get, and it is commonly spread at or near bird feeders. Um, but you're saying for ground feeders, you're getting like doves and stuff that get it? You're saying hawks. I thought you said pox. So, well, side note, if you have an issue with diseases at your bird feeders, clean your feeders with diluted bleach. For hawks, honestly, no. It's just the circle of life. So a lot of bird feeders, I mean, they love all birds and it's just a source of food, but there's not a way to really deter hawks. I mean, you could try putting an owl figurine. They do have like those owl deterrents, but I don't see much success with those.
Do have a question here.
When you re-nest an egg or a bird, should you wear gloves to not tip off the parent that they've been handled by humans?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you can wear gloves just as a protective measure for yourself and the bird, but it's a myth that by touching that bird, the parent won't return. So, birds actually have a very poor sense of smell, and you interacting with that baby bird and re-nesting it will not impact the mother from returning. That is not the case for mammals, and I don't want to provide further advice with mammals because I don't know, not licensed for them.
Thank you. Shall I clean out my birdhouse after birds have nested there and flown away, or shall I leave it for another cycle?
That's completely up to you. They do reuse nest. It depends on the species. Sometimes when you're cleaning out birdhouses, for example, they will build different nests on top of each other. So you'll see 7 layers of nest in a single birdhouse. So you can open up and kind of see what you're working with, but it's up to personal preference. They do reuse nests though occasionally.
How many cases of avian flu are we seeing around here? And if we're picking up all these baby birds that need to be renested,
Yeah.
what precautions do we need to take?
Great question. So thankfully, with baby songbirds, it is not really spreading to songbirds on any discernible scale. It's really heavily impacting waterfowl populations as well as raptors because they're eating our waterfowl, in addition to poultry, of course. Additional precautions I would take is you can wear gloves when handling baby songbirds, but mainly just washing hands is going to be your best bet. If you are interacting with waterfowl on any level, that would be a bit of a different answer. If that waterfowl is exhibiting any symptoms of avian flu, which includes neurological conditions such as tremors, shaking, discoordination, or respiratory symptoms, we would recommend that you not interact with that waterfowl at all, and to instead contact us or your local humane society or animal control for assistance. As far as the number of cases, The Michigan DNR does consider bird flu to be endemic in our waterfowl populations. In southeast Michigan, in particular, we've had some mass die-offs of Canada geese, as well as some other waterfowl species. As a result, the Bird Center is not taking in Canada geese this season, and we're implementing bird flu testing of all young waterfowl admitted, so we can both help keep our patients safe as well as the staff and interns and volunteers that handle them.
Going along with this, a few months ago, they were saying don't fill your bird feeders because of the avian flu. So is that still recommended, or we should go ahead and?
So there's a lot of mixed information on this. I see a mix of both, but the Audubon Society, Cornell, which is kind of the gold standard, as they have the Cornell Bird Lab, the ornithology department there. They recommend that they still say that you can feed birds at your bird feeders. Again, it's not really impacting songbirds the way it's impacting waterfowl, so you're not seeing the diseases being spread at feeders. So as long as you're maintaining clean feeders, so you don't get diseases like pox, not hawks, or other viruses occurring, then you should be just fine. Another virus that you'll commonly see at feeders is finch eye syndrome. We get this one a lot more. It's basically pink eye, but for finches. But unlike us, they need antibiotics for 3 weeks straight, and they need medical intervention. So if you ever do see a finch with crusty eyes or at your feeders, then you'll probably need to catch them and make sure you clean that feeder. It's very often spread there.
How are you funded?
Yeah, great question. So we don't receive any state or federal funding. We do 100% rely on donations. So that is primarily brought by the rescuers that bring in the birds, and then through fundraising initiatives we do, as well as sometimes, we'll apply for like grants and get money from certain foundations.
Since I have the microphone over here, I have one question for you. I like purple martins, but they don't apparently like me. They are often, as I walk through a parking lot near me, they're almost like they're trying to attack me. How do you deal with that? And do they want the hair for their nest, or what's the deal with that?
Definitely. So purple martins, which is a type of aerial insectivore, they can get very territorial. So what they're doing is they're basically saying, "Hey, you're in my area. This is my home." And unfortunately, there's not really a good way to deter those situations except to give them space during their mating and nesting season. Unfortunately, as areas become more urban, there's less wild areas. We're seeing an increase in human wildlife conflicts, and figuring out and educating new ways on how we interact with this wildlife. Yeah. Sorry, but they might want your hair. It's very nice and thick. I think it'd make a good nest. So yeah, there you go. Wear a hat.
You used to be bird rescue. That's a question.
Yeah. So we were the bird center of Washtenaw County.
I have it in my phone, bird rescue. This is from 20 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
A
We
woman
actually
did this, and I had bird rescue, and I've taken 2 birds there, and they took good care of them, and one of them didn't make it. It was a beautiful cardinal, I think it was.
Mm.
And they took the bird. I asked what happened to it, and they took the bird to the U of M where they stuffed the birds.
Yeah, the U of M ornithology lab.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we
So
do work with the U of M lab on donating specimens for use for their ornithology classes as well as for preservation to help educate.
and I looked the phone number up based on what you had
Is it
there.
the same?
It is the
That's
same.
so
That's how I
fun.
knew.
So actually, you're right. Before 2004, when we became the Bird Center of Washtenaw County as a certified nonprofit, there was different variations of the name. So I think at one point we were actually the Bird Rescue of Huron Valley. So we used to work more closely with the Humane Society. We still have a close partnership with them, but we have distinct organizations.
And you're in Saline. Can you share with us where and how if you take volunteers and stuff?
Yeah, great question. So we are in Saline. we're right off of Platt and Bemis. Really, the best way to say it is we're right across the street from the women's prison. So you won't get lost if you do just look for the women's prison. But hey, it allowed us to afford this really nice property. And there hasn't been an escape there since the 70s. So we're good, right? But we are in Saline and we do accept volunteers for all different areas. We've actually, to help accommodate the expected increase of cases, we have different volunteer programs now. So we have an animal care position where you would help clean enclosures and provide enrichment for our patients and helping set up that natural environment in their enclosure to set them up for success in rehab. Sandy is an animal care volunteer at our center. We also have new volunteer opportunities, including a wildlife hotline volunteer program. So if you like to talk on the phone and you like to help educate people, we could definitely use help. As I mentioned, we get calls from all over. We accept about 2,000 birds a year, but we're getting maybe 15,000 calls a year, with over 60% of those calls being in May to August alone. That is where our bulk of our intakes are coming from. So our phones are ringing constantly. And by having volunteers help answer our phone lines, we're able to provide timely advice and assistance while giving our staff and interns that have those medical skills provide higher quality care for our in-house patients. We also have a transport program. So if you guys love birds and you have a driver's license and are wanting to help transport birds, that is something we could use assistance with. So we are the only center that takes in songbirds in the Southeast Michigan area, especially babies. So there's no one in Wayne County, Monroe, Oakland, any of those areas. And a lot of people, they don't ask to find an injured or orphan bird. They just stumble upon it. And they might not have the means or the transportation to bring the bird to our center. So as a wildlife transport volunteer, you can help transport those birds to our center where they can get medical care and rehabilitation. Thank you.
Yeah, I would love some. By the way, thanks for what you do. It's just our songbirds are very important to all of us. So thank you. I'm just curious, could you give us some general advice about sort of when to feed birds? I've heard that it's best not to feed birds in the summer, but to wait so in the winter when they sort of have fewer sources. Could you give us some general advice about that?
Yeah, I would say feeding birds all year round is great. If you want to just feed a certain time of the year, I know birds, once they discover your feeder, you can go through seed very fast. So if you only want to feed a certain time of year, I would definitely recommend doing it during the winter, just because there's more food sources available in the summer months. But in the winter, everything's kind of dying off and there's less food available. So if you have to pick one or the other, I would say winter, but it's great for you to do it all year round. There's no negative to doing it in the summer, except you're going to be spending a lot of money on bird seed. So.
In the spring, we have a cardinal, I think it's a young cardinal, that just keeps running into our window, not at a high speed, like he's trying to get in or something. He sees his reflection, quite honestly, I think. But we've tried closing the curtains. We've put an owl picture in the window. We've put a hawk picture. Nothing works. It just keeps coming, tapping on that window kind of hard.
Yeah, so cardinals, robins, they get very territorial this time of year and they will see their reflection in the window and think it's another bird. They're beautiful, not that smart. So we recommend putting up a deterrent to try and deter them. We've tried, the owl method, doing a breakup of lines to break up the image, and it hasn't been enough. Even in our own case, we had a cardinal doing the same thing at our center, and we found we had to completely tape over that section of the window with newspaper for like a week or two for him to finally stop. So I know it's not the prettiest thing, but it's going to be the best way to get him to stop, especially if like the curtains aren't working. Even if you could maybe put up something on the outside to help deter, just completely solidifying that. And then if he appears to injure himself because, after so many bonks on the head, he might give us a call and we can take him in.
You deal with a lot of different species. I'm curious, how well do birds get along with each other? You've got all these different species around. Can they be together at certain times when you're at your facility? Or and we're talking about your facility, not obviously not out in the wild.
Right. So we do keep only same species in the same enclosure. Occasionally we'll have conspecific, so like a cowbird might be in with a robin. Cowbirds are nest parasites. So what they do, the parents like to lay their eggs in other birds' nest, and they trick the other bird to raise them. So, I mean, it gets the job done, right? We can't all be good parents like the mallard. Um, but we have them separated based on species, and we only let out species that aren't bullies out at the same time. So, like blue jays and woodpeckers, they have their own flight space. We're not letting them interact. But our swallows, they get free flight and they do just fine with our robins. So, it's kind of all about mixing and kind of testing out. But any of like those bully species you get at your bird feeders are considered also kind of bullies in rehab, and we keep them separate from our patients or other bird species.
Okay, we got final 2 questions. One here, and then we have to wrap it up.
For sure. Oh, I also do want to say real quick, sorry, that we do not take in raptors, which is a huge help because they love to eat songbirds. So that would have been a whole other conundrum.
This isn't a question, but there's an app you can excuse me. There's an app you can download onto your phone from Cornell that identifies all the bird songs. So if you download this app and turn your phone on and you hear a bird out in the yard, you can just say identify bird and it tells you it's a Carolina wren, which I have a lot of.
Yeah, I highly recommend downloading that. It's the Merlin Bird ID app. It's really amazing. You're able to do song ID as well as species ID with images.
Hey, last question.
And the app will also show a picture of the bird.
You said that if we find a bird to put it in a box. Well, how would you do that? And would you cover the box? Unfortunately, we've had a few window strikes or hits on off of our deck. And so I had a half a shoebox with holes in it, and I'd cover the bird so it could sort of recover while figuring out what to do. I didn't realize that I should then bring it in, but you would have to put it in a box and keep a cover on it, right? Is that?
Yeah, so definitely keeping that box covered. You can just fold the box over on top of it and do like a small piece of tape as long as it's not tape that the bird is able to get to. You can poke holes in the box if you'd like, but if it's just a temporary thing, they have enough air in the box, they'll be just fine. But we do recommend keeping that box closed. As far as transport, obviously, and catching the bird, the easiest way is if you have a bird net, but not everyone does. Obviously, most people don't. So we recommend throwing a towel or sheet over the bird to capture the bird that way. And we do have videos on our website, birdcentermi.org. It's also in the brochure. On the shared interest group table, we have videos on how to catch a bird, how to transport the bird, and also how to re-nest a baby bird. So we have different ways of showing how to do makeshift nest and how to catch different species. Great. Thank you so much, everyone.